After 2 divorces, Tammy McCreary thought Mr. Right was just a myth.
I was not looking for love. I was looking to just enjoy being single.
Until a handsome young doctor swept her off her feet.
He was Eric Petite, the perfect gentleman. Eric Petite, the great husband.
But Tammy would soon discover that her fairy tale romance was based on lies instead of love.
If he was an actor, I'd say give the man an Oscar.
I had no idea what this person was capable of.
When it comes to love and marriage, things aren't always as they seem. Tammy McCreary had never been lucky in love.
I had dated some characters, so I know all the games, I know all the stories.
So when the mother of 3 went out to an Atlanta club one night in November 2007, love was the last thing on her mind. Until Eric Petite strolled by her table.
We kind of made eye contact, and I thought he was cute. The next time he came by, he just threw money over the area where I was sitting. And everyone was like, okay, well, drinks are on Tammy.
Eric told Tammy that he had just moved to town from Chicago and was looking for a place to buy. Tammy, a mortgage broker, gave him her card. 2 days later, Eric called, but he was more interested in Tammy than a house.
He said that he was an electrical engineer for one of the local utility companies. We started having lunch every day, and we talked all night. So things were moving pretty fast.
He was the kind of guy that would open doors for you. He would rub Tammy's feet, buy her flowers. He was a gentleman to her, and she seemed very happy.
As the relationship took off, Eric told Tammy some of the secrets of his past. He too had been married and had 2 young sons and a stepdaughter. But after his divorce, his life had taken a tragic turn.
In one of our conversations, he just mentioned his children. And of course, I wanted to know, okay, so where are your children? And he said his boys are deceased. And his parents were also deceased, and that they were all killed in a crash. So me being a mother, hearing that just sent chills through me.
In tears, Eric showed Tammy his son's death certificates. But that wasn't the end of the story. Eric told Tammy that before the accident, he had been an ER doctor in Chicago.
Eric did show me transcripts from University of Chicago, but he said that he could not practice after the death of his children. I thought it was sad that now he wasn't doing what was really in his heart to do because of the tragedy.
But 3 weeks after they started dating, Dr. Petite was called into action in spite of himself.
As we were driving, there's like a 3-car collision in front of us. I said, Eric, you gotta help those people. And so he jumped out of the car and he proceeded to help everyone. And I was impressed.
Just 1 month after they met, Eric found another way to impress Tammy. He asked her to marry him.
I said yes, but I made it clear that before we did anything, I definitely wanted us to have counseling.
But only 5 months later, Tammy would regret this leap of faith. On the night of May 18, 2008, at 6 p.m., the love of Tammy's life went in to work a night shift and never came home. For months, reliable Eric always let Tammy know where he was.
Well, Eric always called me to see how I was doing. So this particular Sunday, it was really strange that I had not heard from him.
The next morning, when Tammy still had no word from Eric, panic began to set in.
So I called both cell phones. There was no answer. I waited a while and I tried the cell phones again. Still no response. So I called the hospital. I called in the emergency department.
What Tammy heard next would tear her new life apart. Eric had been at the hospital that night, but there was more to his visit than Tammy could have ever imagined.
I was at ground zero. I could not believe it.
Eric was very smart, but I've always heard that it's a thin line between genius and insanity.
In December of 2007, 5 months before Eric Petite suddenly vanished, he took his new fiancée, Tammy McCreary, out for a special surprise.
He wanted to go shop for rings, so he went to a store and he said, let's look at a 3-carat peerless in the antique setting. And the salesperson said, okay, this is $30,000. And I'm like, $30,000. So Eric says to him, well, just give me a day or two.
But later that night, Eric got a devastating phone call.
Well, I was sitting in the living room watching television with my mother, and Eric called her upstairs to speak with her for a second. Then I just heard a loud outburst. So I ran upstairs, and he was laying in my mother's lap, and he was crying very, very hard.
Through his tears, Eric told Tammy that his 12-year-old stepdaughter had committed suicide. As Tammy tried to comfort Eric, he explained that his ex-wife had no money for her funeral.
He was told that it was gonna take $30,000 to cover the service, and he needed to take care of it. And I mean, I understood. And so I told him, we'll deal with the ring later.
Tammy suggested that Eric move in with her so he wouldn't be alone. But not everyone thought it was a good idea.
Everything was just coming all of a sudden, so I didn't trust him very much at all. I was like, you meet this guy who's not even from Atlanta, he's just moved here from Chicago, his family's dead. I said, what if he killed his family?
Tammy may have been in love, but she had 3 children to protect. So she decided to get Eric checked out.
I contacted a friend of mine who has a security firm, and I gave him Eric's information. And he came back to me and he says he's clean. He has nothing. So that made me feel very comfortable.
But one detail was rather puzzling. Nothing turned up about the accident that killed his children.
Whenever Eric talked about his children and the accident, he was very emotional. I've never seen a man cry like that, so I felt like he needed support.
So Tammy put her concerns about Eric behind her and focused on the wedding. To her delight, Eric took care of the invitations. And when the guests started to respond, she got a big surprise.
I had people calling me saying, Eric's a doctor? I didn't know you were marrying a doctor. So he showed me a copy of the invitations, and it said, Doctor and Tammy. He says, well, it was really supposed to be a wedding present for you. I'm going back into medicine.
Eric told Tammy he had been offered a job in the emergency room at a nearby hospital. It would begin after the wedding.
When he said that he was going to be starting working at the hospital, I was thinking, well, maybe there is some truth to this guy, so let's give it a shot.
4 months after they met, Tammy married her handsome doctor in a small ceremony in their living room.
I was very excited to know that I was going to be a doctor's wife. I just felt like This was the prayer that was answered. This was like a fairy tale.
Over the next 2 months, Tammy settled into life as a stay-at-home doctor's wife.
I would drive to the hospital every day, drop him off, and go back in the evenings and pick him up. Some days he would go in with a lab coat and he would come home in scrubs.
But sometimes Eric's new job seemed to take a toll.
There were a few times he would call very upset, telling me stories of a child coming in an accident and he couldn't save the child. There were a few occasions when he would get a call 3, 4 o'clock in the morning and he would have to leave and go to the hospital.
And the more Eric was gone, the more Tammy began to wonder. She had heard a few stories of doctors running off with their nurses.
I knew he was young, he was attractive, and he was the new guy at the hospital. So, I just started paying attention to different things.
Before long, Tammy found something that seemed to confirm her biggest fear. A sexy text message that had nothing to do with work.
Once I read the text message, it just didn't seem professional. So I just decided to call the number.
Tammy knew whoever picked up her call might very well ruin her fairy tale marriage. But she couldn't stop herself from dialing.
We were just like, oh my goodness, who is this guy?
Tammy McCreary sometimes worried that her new husband Eric might be too good to be true. So when she found a suspicious text on Eric's cell phone, she instantly feared the worst.
I just decided I would call that number back. And of course, it was a young lady. And she was like really friendly, like, hi. And I said, this is Eric's wife. Who are you? And her response was, if you want to know who I am, I suggest you ask your husband.
That night, Tammy got ready to have it out with her man.
I waited about 30 minutes, and then Eric comes charging into the bedroom. I've never seen him this angry. He says, you almost cost me my job. Do you know that was my superior that you called? And I just felt like some little teenager playing a little silly game.
Ashamed that her snooping could have cost Eric everything, Tammy decided to trust her husband, for better or for worse. But less than 2 months later, that trust would be destroyed forever. On May 18th, 2008, the good doctor went in to work a night shift. But when the next morning arrived with no word from Eric, Tammy knew something was seriously wrong.
I called both cell phones. There was no answer. So I said, well, I've never called the hospital, but I think I need to call today. Well, I called in the emergency department and they put me on hold. Then they came back and they said, ma'am, there's not a Dr. Petite here. And I said, okay, well, I know they can't possibly know all of the doctors, so I decided to call the cell phone back. And this time, I got an answer. So I asked for Dr. Petite. And the lady says, oh, are you talking about the guy that was using this cell phone? And I said, yes, because now I'm thinking, okay, finally, somebody knows Dr. Petite.
But what the woman said next was the last thing Tammy expected to hear.
She says, oh, well, you need to call security because that guy was arrested for impersonating a doctor last night. And I just lost it.
Police were called when a nurse reported that a man she didn't recognize had been hanging around the emergency room. The man was Dr. Eric Petite, but the hospital had no idea who he was.
He's dressed like a doctor from head to toe. He has a doctor's badge. He had taped his photo over the photo of the actual doctor on the badge. He had a prescription pad and some prescription drugs. And he was certainly getting around different controlled areas of the hospital.
For weeks, Tammy's husband Eric managed to roam the hospital undetected. And surprisingly, he had just one motive for playing doctor.
Most fraud cases involve people who are trying to get money. And it appeared that this guy was there to hit on women. One of the spokeswomen for the hospital said some of the female staffers described him as adorable.
But if Eric had been playing doctor just to meet women, what else was he lying about? Tammy was determined to find out.
Immediately, I just wanted to just start investigating everything that he had ever told me. I started going through his clothes. I was going through pockets, looking for pieces of paper, just anything. There was a duffel bag that was in the closet, and in the duffel bag, I saw papers.
Eric's web of lies was far from over, and Tammy was about to learn just how far he would go to deceive her.
I had no idea what this person was capable of.
The day she found out her husband was arrested for impersonating a doctor, Tammy McCreary started her own investigation to find out who Eric Petite really was.
I was so afraid that someone would come back and say, hey, his name isn't Eric Petite. I mean, I just did not know what to expect.
Deep in Eric's duffel bag, Tammy uncovered another secret. A probation notice from the courts of Chicago.
So at that point, I'm thinking like, wow, I figured it had to be bad.
The probation officer explained to Tammy that Eric had been charged with check fraud, and there was a warrant out for his arrest. But then she heard something even worse.
And she confirmed that he did have 2 children. I said, were they deceased? And she says, no, not that I know of. So I looked at the death certificate and I contacted the funeral home. And they had never heard of any persons in there with those names.
The tragedy that had opened Tammy's heart to Eric was one of the most shocking lies of all. Eric had 2 sons by 2 different mothers, and both boys, along with his parents, were very much alive. What kind of man could lie about the deaths of his children?
That lie really scared me because now I had no idea what this person was capable of.
That really changed everything. It's one thing to just lie about your profession, but for him to say that his kids are dead, that is so heartless.
Eric had faked it all. The death certificates, the medical school transcripts, even his stepdaughter's suicide. It seemed the only thing Eric hadn't lied about was his name.
I wouldn't come out of the house. I didn't talk on the phone. I did nothing because I just could not believe that I allowed him to suck me into this with all those lies.
Even Tammy's background check had failed her. She had used the information on Eric's driver's license, and it was phony too. Now, instead of feeling careful, she felt like a fool.
I think her guards were totally down, which had not been that way for many, many years. And everything he had said, he had proven to her, so she had no reason to question.
It turned out that Eric had a long history of lying, and Tammy wasn't the first woman he had conned. Joy Richardson married Eric in Chicago in 2001.
Eric asked me to marry him 2 weeks after meeting me. I thought he was my dream guy. He was very nice looking. It was something about him that drew me in.
And when it came to work, Eric dreamed big.
He told me that he created a touchscreen computer, and he accepted a deal from one big major company, and they were going to give him a $2.5 million sign-on bonus, but he turned out to be a pathological liar.
And just like it did with Tammy, shortly after Joy said "I do," her marriage began to unravel.
2 months into our marriage, I found out that I was pregnant, and he started disappearing. He didn't know how to keep up with the lies that he was telling, so instead of confronting them or dealing with them, he would run. I honestly think that Eric will never stop lying. I think this is part of his makeup, so I don't think that he'll change.
On December 15th, 2009, Eric Petite negotiated a deal and pled guilty to identity fraud and theft. He was sentenced to 42 months in prison. But before he went in, he apologized to Tammy on the local news.
Tammy, you know, I'm very, very sorry for the things that I sent you through.
There was no doubt Tammy's luck in love had run out. Today, Tammy McCreary has made many changes. She has a job she loves, and for the first time in years, she's the one making the decisions.
My mom is doing wonderful today. I love this person that she has become.
I am finally independent. I have my own life, and I'm just enjoying life. I'm enjoying my children. Okay, your turn.
But there's one thing Tammy isn't doing: dating.
As far as relationship, it's kind of like she's hit the delete button on that whole chapter. I believe that if someone was trying to ask her out, she wouldn't go out.
I don't think that you could ever truly know someone. That is a very scary thought. But I will say, dismiss nothing. Things that seem to be small and little, don't dismiss it.